Hi pals, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing The Alloy of Law by Brandon Sanderson. This review will mostly be spoiler free, but it may have a few minor spoilers for the original trilogy, so I probably wouldn't watch this if you haven't read that already. But with that, let's get right into the review. So this book takes place about 300 years after the original trilogy. So the characters in the original trilogy are sort of myth and legend in this book. Also sort of religious, which is quite interesting. And it's nice to have some of the old characters mentioned. It's like a little Easter egg. The setting of this book is more Wild West meets steampunk, which at first I wasn't sure about because that's generally not my kind of scene. But you know, actually it worked because they had guns and stuff, so I think that made it quite interesting with the combination of using the metals and how that worked and how non-allomancers would have a bit more leverage when coming up against allomancers. The setting also low-key made me want to buy a cowboy hat, cowboy boots even, and a Stetson. Watch this space. As always, Sanderson's world building is phenomenal. I'm sure you've heard, even if you haven't read any of his books, that he is so good with the magic system. Because, you know, sometimes you read a fantasy book and the author doesn't really give a proper explanation as to how the magic works. They just go, because it's magic. Whereas Mistborn books are almost a little bit more scientific, and you find yourself nodding like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I always find myself thinking, I wonder if my iron tablets will give me the ability to pull on metal. Maybe I should ask my GP. So a brief explanation of the metallic arts. First of all, you have allomancy, which is where you will swallow the metals and then you can burn them when you ingest them. So an example of allomancy would be you could riot or calm people's emotions, you could push or pull on metals, you may have enhanced senses, and allomancy is probably the most common one. The second one is Furukami, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, which you may have braces on your arms which pierce your skin, and the metal more acts like a medium here, whereas it works as a catalyst in allomancy. So you can store your powers in, they call them the metal mines. So an example of these may be you could store strength by being really weak for a lot of time. You could store a healing power by being sick for a long period of time, or be heavier by being light for a longer period of time. So it's quite interesting. You can be twin-born, so you may have allomancy and Furukami, but that's quite rare. You may have one or the other, but allomancy is the more common one. Finally, there's hemalurgy, which isn't really mentioned in this book, but it's definitely a big part of the original trilogy. It's much darker. So I hope we get to see maybe a little bit more of it in the next Wax and Wayne books, because I do find it super interesting. But please nobody spoil anything. So in general, The Alloy of Law is much lighter than the first Mistborn books. In the original trilogy, it's very much life or death, or more like life or death of the entire planet. So the stakes are much higher. So I can see why some people may find The Alloy of Law a little bit disappointing, because it's just much lighter. But I didn't feel that way at all. I thought it was really good, just in a completely different way. So the basic premise of this book is the main character, Waxilium, used to be a lawmaker in the Roughs, which is basically a barren, sparsely populated area. We think Wild West films, you know. But his uncle has died, and his uncle was a lord of an estate, so he has to go and take over and run the family estate. But there are some kidnappings and some robberies on some trains, and he decides to investigate them and try to solve the mystery with the help of Wayne, who is also a lawmaker in the Roughs and is his best friend, and together they're a really great duo. I really like them together. There's a lot of banter between them. Wayne is hilarious. Sanderson's really funny. Like, you know, I mean, he's quite funny in the original Mistborn trilogy, but this one made me laugh out loud. I really enjoyed it. Wayne's obviously there partly for a bit of comic relief. Yeah, and it really works. I thought it was great. There's another female character. I won't say her name, because I don't like spoilers. But she's really good as well, but I thought she was a little bit undeveloped. But who knows, maybe in the next books we'll see a little bit more of her. I hope so, because I did really like her. She was an interesting character. So overall, I would give this book a 5 out of 5. I really loved it. I loved it in just a completely different way to the original trilogy, so I can't wait to pick up the next ones. Actually, a side note about Sanderson books that I really like is in the appendix. He gives a list of all the metals and all the powers they give, which is really handy to just flip back and check. I know an appendix is quite commonplace in fantasy books. Cough, cough, Tolkien, looking at you with your appendices. But I thought that was a nice feature. So I can't wait to pick up the next Wax and Wayne books. Hopefully the final one will be released soon, because I'd rather just binge them all. I currently own Warbreaker and what is it? Arcanum Unbounded, is that it? That's like a collection of short stories. And I also really want to pick up Elantris. And then, of course, the creme de la creme, Stormlight Archive. So I hope to get to that soon, but that's going to be a big series, man. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review, and I hope you give Alloy of Law a go. Bye!